You may have heard of this quote, have faith over fear. Fear is just false evidence appearing real. But let me tell you, even after I heard this, trusting myself still wasn't easy. It still felt like one of the scariest things ever. If you're anything like me, fully trusting yourself and trusting your decisions sometimes feels like you're leaping off a cliff into a dark abyss with absolutely no light and no guidance around you. You may have heard of this quote, have faith over fear. Fear is just false evidence appearing real. But let me tell you, even after I heard this, trusting myself still wasn't easy. It still felt like one of the scariest things ever. So, how did I come to learn that? The biggest thing I realized was, first I needed to understand, what is it that I actually want and need in my life? I needed to start setting boundaries, which I've talked about before. But in order to do that, I needed to know, what is it that I want? But before we even get to that place of understanding what I want, it's not about what do you want to eat for lunch today, or what coffee do you want to have in the morning, or do you prefer tea? I'm talking about the wants and the desires and the needs that you have for your life. Because we only get to do this whole thing once. And I wish I had realized this earlier, that for such a long time and so many years, I was making choices around wants and needs that weren't actually coming from me. And so I realized that there was something deeper, something that was missing, and I couldn't really understand what that was. I went to other books and I went to mentors, and they all told me their wants and needs, their stories. And I realized I had to come back and ask myself, not just what do I want and what do I need, but who do I want to be? And the reason why I lacked this confidence in myself, I lacked trust in myself, and so therefore I didn't trust the decisions I was making. I didn't trust in the steps that came up in my life in order to meet my goals, because there just was that deeper essence and that deeper element missing. And what that was that I didn't understand my own values. So our values are things that are related to who do we want to be, right? We differentiate them from our needs, which come a lot of the time from biological things. You're always going to need to eat and drink. That's something that we can't really decide as humans. But our values determine our character. Our values determine how we show up in the world, what we say yes to and what we say no to. And there's no way that we can actually trust in our decisions or set good boundaries with other people or follow through on our dreams and our desires if we don't understand who we want to be. So we start with our values. And I came to understand for myself, man, even when I thought I valued certain things, for example, I valued freedom, right? This was a big value that I came up with for myself. And so I started to travel around the world, and I lived in one place, and then I moved to another place in another country, just like that. There were times where within a month, I was at home 3 days out of the whole month, and I visited 5 different countries. And I remember being asked this question, Lina, what is it that you actually want? And I had always said, yes, I want to have my own business. I want to move around. I want to have a family and a really deep connection, because connection is actually something that I truly value, and it's really important to me. And I realized that I wasn't actually making choices, making decisions that were in alignment with this deep desire, this value that I had for connection. Because freedom, I was just following kind of what everybody else said freedom was. I didn't realize that for me, freedom actually meant having a nourishing, healthy partnership with someone who supported me emotionally and in so many other ways. It meant having connection to myself. It meant having connection to people who were in my close circle. And so I started to question these values. And I got to that question again. Who do I want to be? And what do I need to do to achieve that? And I realized as well that in my business, the way I was running it, the business model I was setting up for myself, was leading me further and further away from actually who I was at my core and how I needed to live my life in order to truly feel fulfilled. I was taking on values that had been given to me by society, from my peers, even from my parents and my family. Because I hadn't taken the time to really ask myself, what is it that I need? What do I, Lina, need? And who do I need to be? What values do I need to have in order to be that person? And so, for example, health and living holistically is extremely important to me. I valued my well-being, but I wasn't living my life in accordance with those things. I was surrounding myself with people who weren't living the healthiest of lifestyles. I was going to entrepreneurial meetups and doing all these things that purported that hustle mentality, right? And I fell into that. And so again, I came back to ask myself, what do I value? What are my greatest values? For me, shutting out any other voices. And yes, so I got a list as well to help me, because it can be tricky to come up with this just off the top of your head. What actually are values? And so I started to go through this list, and I had a whole list of 10 different words. And I struck out some of them, and then I had 5, then I had 7. And I finally came down to 5 big ones, but 3 really core values, which to me are connection, meaningful work, and growth. Those are the key core elements that I lead my life by. And so I realized that once I was really firm in understanding those, any challenges that came my way were actually a lot easier to deal with. I trusted my decisions more because I knew now who I was at its core. And of course, your values can shift, but it takes quite a while. And what I realized actually, coming back to my past self, that girl who valued freedom at the very top, it was actually coming from a deeper place of fear. Because who I wanted to be wasn't that girl at all. That was just what was comfortable for me. And so this is another important thing to understand. Once you define your values, you're going to have to keep reaffirming them. As I said, you understand who you are when you understand what your values are. And when challenges come your way, when opportunities come your way, when people who bring certain things into question, the one thing you won't be questioning is this what I really want? Is this who I really am? Because you've defined that already. You already know that. And so, before you go looking at what do I want in my life, what are my desires, look at what do I value. And if you don't yet know what you value, Ask yourself, who do I want to be? And what are the values that this person needs to have? Then how can I start practicing those today? Because it all starts just with the next choice. For me, for example, when I made the decision that I'm going to trust myself, I'm going to live a life that is surrounded by growth, meaningful work, and connection, then I knew if this doesn't align, this next choice that I'm going to make, it doesn't align with my growth, with having meaningful work in my life and doing something that is of purpose, and it doesn't connect me with someone else, then it may not be for me. So what is it for you? Who do you want to be?